This is the Dental Hacks Podcast, a podcast created by dentists for dentists. Now, sit back, relax. You're about to be hacked.
Hello, Dental Hacks listeners, and welcome to episode 96 of the Dental Hacks Podcast. My name is Alan Mead. Tonight, I'm going solo. Jason and I just tried to record, and his internet is down. Apparently, that's the kind of day he was having, so none of this should be a surprise, but tonight, I'm solo. So, thanks for sticking with us anyhow. So, it's kind of funny. Jason had talked about how today was a really rough day for him because both of his assistants had called in sick at the same time. It's kind of awful. And I was laughing because I had a hygienist that had to call in sick. Long story short, she had her son was sick, couldn't go to daycare, and so she had to stay home with him. And I was in that spot where, like, I have a few subs that I can go to for hygiene. So short notice, a lot of times we can get away with it where we call someone who's familiar with the office, worked before, covered us for maternity leave, so knows the office and everyone likes her and gets along well with her. Or sometimes I'll be able to get my second hygienist to be able to sneak in, but neither of those worked today. So then you have to weigh the idea of bringing in someone brand new that doesn't know the office at all to try and train them along the way. I mean, because we didn't find out till last night, or to just bail on the production. And what we ended up doing was sort of a hybrid of those things. I actually saw some hygiene patients between my patients, which was nightmarish, to be honest. But I know there's plenty of dentists out there who actually do their own hygiene and they kind of work it in like that. Actually, if there's any listeners out there that do their own hygiene in such a way that they kind of run it along with a restorative schedule, I would love to hear about that. That would be an interesting concept to me. Drop us a line at info@dentalhacks.com if you are that person. If you do your hygiene and you run like a general dental practice. There's some appeal for the fact that you have less employees to deal with, but on the other hand, it can't be like, I mean, when you think of all the big, most profitable practices you've ever heard of, they got a bunch of hygienists that are cranking it out. So obviously it's sort of it goes kind of against all of that. So I'd just be curious anyhow. I was thinking about that. Hygiene is sort of a funny, it's sort of a love-hate relationship because the more employees you have, the more complicated, the more, there always comes along with drama when you got more employees. Even when you've got really good employees, there's always something, So I'm just curious to hear what everyone has to say about that. So we have the second half of our interview with David Harris of Prosperident. And I've heard some comments from people about the first half of the interview, and I just really enjoyed this interview. It's pretty crazy because he was great. And I mean, not that I was surprised that he was great, but I was actually surprised that I found the topic so interesting. We sort of talk a little bit more about some of the classic things that you hear to prevent embezzlement in the dental office. When you're talking about, plugging in codes, so everyone's got their own secret code in the practice management software that they have to plug in every time they put something in, or using a camera in the main office, like the front office, or using like key log sorts of things. And David's like, he doesn't have a problem with that, but he didn't feel like it was a great solution. I was very surprised by that, to be honest. I always thought that those were kind of the things that you were supposed to do, and that's kind of where we were heading as a profession to cover that. And he's like, no, really, it has so much more to do with just being keyed into the behavior of your office team. But he had a lot of really, really good suggestions. And then also he's offering, if you're a listener of the Dental Hacks, he's offering to use their risk assessment management tool for embezzlement for free. And I got to tell you, it's a really good deal. Like, they normally charge like $79 for it, and you can take their risk assessment for free if you use the code Dental Hacks. It's all lowercase all together. And the link is in the show notes. And so if you want to check it out, go to the show notes. Either go through your phone software and just click on the link that's in there, or you can go to dentalhacks.com and click on episode 96, and in the show notes, there will be a link. So check that out. I'd love to hear what you think about that. I have to admit, I haven't taken it yet. I have a little bit of fear, but it sounds like some of my friends who have found themselves quite vulnerable to embezzlement. So it's interesting stuff. So why don't you guys sit back, take a listen to David Harris of Prosperident.
And now it's time for the Dental Hacks interview.
of changes would embezzlers have in their life that sort of switch them onto this?
Embezzlers steal for two reasons, and I will summarize them as need and greed. And needy thieves are exactly the way you picture them. You know, something has happened in their life that's created a financial imbalance. Maybe their spouse lost their job. Maybe they have a gambling addiction or something that's, you know, kind of upset the family finances. And they're stealing to buy groceries and make the mortgage payment. And I think we can all understand that at some level of financial pressure, people's ethics become more pliable, and, you know, they see this as survival.
Sure.
So those are needy thieves.
It's easy to justify when your back's against the wall too. That's sort of I'm sure that's typically how it, well, not typically, but I'm sure that it could start that way, where you're like, man, you know, I'm in trouble now. I don't want to, you know, I'm just going to do it this once kind of thing. And they realize, A, it's pretty easy, and B, no one noticed, you know, one of those things. It's sort of, and then they can continue to justify.
And when somebody's 2 months behind in their mortgage payment and they're about to lose their house, they're thinking survival.
Yep, definitely.
So the first group is needy. The second group, the greedy ones, really fascinate me. And these people are a little different. They're not stealing because they have to. They're stealing because it gratifies them at some emotional level. And I can give you a great example. A case that we worked on a few years ago was somebody who was stealing, and then she won $3 million in the state lottery.
Wow.
And after she won $3 million, not only did she not quit her job in the dental office, she kept stealing.
Wow.
So it clearly, I don't remember why she got started, but at that point, it clearly was not about stealing out of need. She was getting some kind of biochemical release from the act of stealing, you know, almost the same way somebody who goes skydiving or bungee jumping might get a rush from doing it.
Sure. I mean, it's a cat and mouse game, right? You got to, I mean, if they may believe that it's something where they could get caught. In a lot of cases, I suspect they've put themselves in that spot where they're, you know, in the business owner's mind, the dentist's mind, they're beyond reproach. But yeah, it's got to be like that. That's crazy.
At least she had enough money for legal fees afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and fortunately enough to fully repay the dentist when we caught her.
I'll bet.
But, you know, that's an extreme example. But there are lots of people who are stealing, again, not because they need to pay mortgage payments, but they're spending money on personal trainers and something that I didn't even know existed called the Shoe of the Month Club.
If you know of an employee that is having something, and you know something has happened in their life, what types of things would you look out for? I mean, would you restrict that person's access to the software, or what are the precautions that you could take?
Let's go back, Jason, to what I said before about the vast majority of dental office employees being honest, honorable people, who would not, even in a difficult financial situation, contemplate stealing from the dentist. You know, a lot of single moms work in dental offices. With what a dental assistant or a receptionist is paid, if you're a single mom, you're almost certain to have financial issues. Does that mean they're embezzling? Absolutely not. Different people have different thresholds that they have to cross before they will embark on criminal activity. And I kind of think of this like hurdles. And for some people, their criminal threshold is very low, and it won't take much to convince them to steal. For others, it's really high, and in the same situation, they just absolutely would not think of stealing. So I don't think we should assume, for example, that merely because somebody is in financial difficulty that they're stealing. You're onto something, though, in a more abstract sense, that behavior is the best marker of embezzlement. People who are stealing act in certain ways, and if people know what those ways are, they will be well positioned to identify a thief. finances is one thing. If you told me that you have somebody in your office and you know they're in financial trouble and they absolutely refuse to take vacation, and you're still using Dentrix G4 because they're dead set against upgrading to a more current version of the software and a few other things, now I'd get concerned.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, I know tons of dentists who are well behind the upgrades, and they tell us it's because of, I mean, I know tons of people that are, and they are thinking that they're, and perhaps it's because their office manager, oh, well, they've heard the new thing. Tell me a little bit more about that. Are the newer updates have better security or better features? Is that, I'm very interested to hear about that.
Usually they do, but that's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the shoes of an embezzler for a minute, and you've got some methodology that's working.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's in the upgrade.
Right.
So you have no idea whether the method that you've now tried and proven for embezzlement is going to unceremoniously be shut down when the software upgrade goes in. And let's be clear, there are lots of other reasons why people don't upgrade software.
Sure.
For example, in a lot of cases, it means they have to go out and buy new hardware.
Sure.
But
I'm going to tell you that plenty of people, I guarantee you, have heard from their office people saying, "Oh no, it's because this, and this." So that's that right there is a very worthwhile thing to have mentioned.
I'm one of them. I'll tell you right now that anytime there's a new version of anything, it's
yeah, you don't want to be the beta tester. I get that. I get that.
Yeah, and of course, every human has some level of resistance to change. I mean, nobody wants to learn, whatever learning curve there might be from, in going from EagleSoft 16 to EagleSoft 17. Given the choice, everybody would rather not face that. But there are also people who are opposed to that upgrade because, again, they have the fear that it might interfere be a lot harder with their stealing pattern.
Sure. Wow. I'd never thought about that in a million years. All right. So we've kind of covered where people are coming from. At this point, I feel like what can dentists do to make themselves safer from all this stuff? Like, what sorts of things should they be implementing in their office with their software and with all that stuff to make themselves safer?
I'd like to add on to that too. And what is the impetus for most dentists to call you at that point?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah,
we get really three different kinds of calls. We get people who have already found embezzlement and they need us to help them understand what happened, uncover the rest of it, because most of the time what a dentist will find is really the tip of an iceberg. And something that your audience should know is that the typical embezzler employs three methodologies at once. In other words, they all seem to have some kind of instinct that says that if I push any one way of stealing too hard, it will become conspicuous. So I'll take a little bit this way and a little bit that way and try to fly under the radar.
I gotta jump in here. That is exactly when I was in trouble, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I totally did the same thing. Like I'd get my stuff different ways because I didn't want any one particular person to think I was, to set any flags off. That's very interesting.
Of course. So we have people who have confirmed embezzlement. We have people who strongly suspect embezzlement, and there could be a whole host of factors that would start them suspecting. I mean, one is they may listen to a podcast like this or hear me speak somewhere, go to our website, read an article, things like that. We also have something that I'll talk about maybe at the end called the Embezzlement Risk Assessment Questionnaire. And this is a questionnaire that we've designed to help people identify and categorize high-risk behaviors on the part of their employees. So in various ways, people realize that they're at elevated risk, and they call us and ask us to investigate for them. And the third group who call us say something along the lines of, I have no reason to believe that I'm at an unusual amount of risk for this, but I see the statistics and I just want to stay out of them, and what can you do for me there? So we deal with those three groups a little bit differently from each other. in answer to your question about what can people do, the first thing I want to say about that is there's a myth, and the myth is what I call the myth of prevention. Almost everybody who comes into one of my seminars believes that what I'm about to tell them is what I'm about to do is give them some pearls that they can take back and implement in their office that will make it less likely that they will be embezzled. And I think a lot of dentists have they underestimate embezzlers. They don't appreciate the creativity and, probably more important, the adaptability that embezzlers have. Embezzlement doesn't happen in a vacuum. If I work for you, Alan, I study you the way you study a bug under a microscope in biology class. I know your habits, and I know how you think, and I know what you look at, and probably more importantly, what you don't. So when I plan my embezzlement, what I'm really doing is navigating around your scrutiny. And if you apply different scrutiny, that's just an input into my decision process. And there's no such thing as an embezzlement-proof office. And we've seen literally hundreds of different ways to embezzle.
Sure.
So the embezzlement-proof office doesn't exist. But what people do is they assume that they can, if they have a really tight office, that they can deter embezzlers. What people are doing here is misanalogizing. If you have an alarm system on your house, it's very effective. It will drastically reduce the chance you're going to be burglarized. But it doesn't do that because it's turning criminals into honest people. It does it because when I get to your front door and I see the alarm sticker, what I do is I move on down your street and rob your neighbor instead.
Sure.
So it doesn't affect the overall crime rate in your city. It just diverts crime from you to somebody else. The difference between house burglary and embezzlement is that in embezzlement, there's no alternative victim. So if I work for you, there's only one person I can steal from. It's you. I'm not going to decide, well, it's too hard to steal from Alan, so I'll quit my job with him. I'll go find another dentist who I think will be an easier mark, like, let's say, Jason.
Go to Jason's office, yeah.
Go to Jason's office and invest the 2 to 3 years that I'm going to have to put in to understand Jason well enough to be able to steal. Embezzlers don't do that. They're stuck with their victim. What they have control over is not who their victim is, but how they steal from him. So the concept that if we just make it a little bit harder for people to steal, they won't try, is fallacious. When we talk to people about what they can do in their office, our focus is really two things. We want to increase the chance that if embezzlement is happening, that you spot it. And we want to push people from methodologies that are relatively easy and hard to detect into higher risk ones. So that's our focus.
Wow.
And
I'm going to tell you this. That was not the answer I was expecting, like at all. It's kind of, I get it. It makes perfect sense, but that was not what I was expecting at all.
No, you thought I was going to say, well, everybody needs their own password in the practice management software. You can't use the Unicode.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, I don't disagree with that advice.
Sure.
But if I'm working for you and everybody has their own password, and let's assume that mine doesn't let me do the things I want to do to steal, what do you think my response is?
Learn everyone else's password.
Yeah, I got to get some password, and what better one to get than the doctor's?
Yeah, my I got to just say this. Like, one of my really good friends is one of the people that was embezzled, and I literally earlier this week was telling him, I said, we're talking with David, and I said, it's one of those things where I know they talk about that password thing. That it's like, she knew everyone's password at our office, and so when you run an audit trail, nothing ever pointed to her. So you're just like, come on! It was supposed to be that was supposed to be the answer. That's I get it. It's interesting. I never would have believed that in a million years. I was not expecting that.
When I worked at the grocery store, I memorized the manager's password because I got tired of calling him over to put the password.
Yeah.
Well played, Jason. Well played.
I never did anything dishonest. I just didn't want to wait for him.
Sure.
Sure you didn't. I still love that movie that Clint Eastwood made in the '80s called Heartbreak Ridge, where he plays a Marine gunnery sergeant,
Okay.
and he had this motto for his Marines that was improvise, adapt, and overcome, and that's the embezzler's model.
Uh-huh.
They're not going to simply walk away because everybody has their own password, and if they use their password, it's more likely they'll get caught. The adaptation is, I need somebody else's password.
Yeah.
So every control is ultimately circumventable. And when you think about what controls really are in dental offices, there are a series of rules that the dentist makes.
Yep.
That then they expect the staff to carry out.
Yep. And on top of that, the rules, the way they implement the rules is have their office people put them in place. So it's like, yeah, exactly the wrong. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was speaking somewhere about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was talking about how thieves cash checks. And there was one of these guys that I refer to as the bruxism guys. So he was one of these people I talking about sitting there with his arms folded and frowning. And he made the mistake of putting up his hand and saying, well, that would never happen in my office. And when you're on the podium and somebody says that to you, there's only one answer. You say,
Yeah.
oh, really? So that's what I said. And he said, well, yes, all of our checks are stamped for deposit only to account number 123456 at whatever bank. And the question I asked him that made him squirm and the guy on either side of him laugh was, do you stamp the checks yourself? And he got this huffy look on his face as if to say, no, I'm a restorer of smiles, not a stamper of checks. And I said, below my pay grade. And I said to him, okay, let's see if I understand this. Let's assume that you have an embezzler in your office. And what that means is that by definition, they don't feel a compulsion to follow society's rules. Why the hell are they going to follow yours? And he was just sitting there with this very blank look on his face. But that's the dentist's solution to the problem. I'll make a rule. I'll have a policy. I'll put it in writing. And none of those are bad ideas, but they're not going to stop embezzlement.
Sure.
Because if I'm going to steal your checks, I'm sure as hell not going to stamp the ones I'm planning on cashing. Or if I do, it won't be with your stamp, it'll be with mine.
Yep. So with that in mind, I want to take you a little further. Like what kinds of things, what kinds of outside the box things should we be thinking of? In other words, we're all thinking of the things that we've heard before that are maybe more conventional. What kinds of things would be doing or looking for? I'm kind of you have me with bated breath. I'm waiting.
There was a discussion not too long ago whether to have cameras in the office. I know there was somebody on our Facebook page that was talking about that.
And I'm immediately thinking, well, I definitely won't do it in front of the camera then.
Let's talk about cameras because that's a question I get asked a lot, and it's back to not really understanding how embezzlers think. And let's not take this out of context. I think cameras in dental offices have a lot of other uses. Cameras are really good when the time of an event can be pinpointed. So, for example, if you have cameras in your operatory and some patient claims that you gave her nitrous oxide and then groped her, cameras are great because you can find out what time she was in. You can go to the film and you can show that your hands never went below her bib. However, embezzlement can happen anytime. So if your office is open 35 hours a week and it takes 2 cameras to watch your front desk, you're shooting 70 hours of film a week. When are you going to watch it?
The other thing I'm thinking to myself, now that you're saying that, embezzlement probably looks an awful lot like running the office too.
It definitely does.
Like I don't think they don't put the villain's mask on or anything like that when they do it. They don't put a special burglar,
And you're not likely to see a big wad of cash being taken out of the cash drawer and stuck in their purse.
Jammed in their pocket, yeah.
I'm hoping for the dishonest person that enunciates everything they do loudly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now,
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just typing this in right now.
So
How about key loggers too? I've heard people ask about key loggers on the computer.
same problem.
Yeah.
The legitimate business of a front desk keyboard is thousands and thousands of keystrokes a day. When are you going to review all that?
I'm going to let my office manager review that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, because, there's never any embezzlement by office manager.
No, never.
That might be like giving the fox the keys to the hen house.
Exactly.
So the problem with all of that monitoring is just the volume of stuff that you have to do. I again, go back to the video cameras and picture yourself on the weekend with 70 hours of video to watch. And sure, you can speed it up 10 to 1. So everybody looks like they're seriously on amphetamines, but even then you have 7 hours. So you spend basically all day Saturday watching the front desk video.
I have a dark room and a pack of cigarettes, and I just sit in there.
Good for you.
Good times.
But no control is meaningful unless it's monitored. So cameras, key loggers, things like that, useless for this purpose. What really works, and what I'd like, if your audience takes away one thing from this other than, how much fun it is listening to you guys banter with each other, I'd like it to be this. There are a lot of ways to steal from you. But what is a good common factor is the way people act when they do it. And I'll give you a couple of statistics. The American Dental Association did an embezzlement survey in 2007. And one of the things they did in it that was quite interesting was they asked embezzlement victims, what tipped you off? How did you realize that you had been stolen from? And two things came out of it. Most embezzlement was uncovered by luck. In other words, the planned systems that people put in place in the hope that it would catch things like embezzlement were very ineffective. The second thing was that most embezzlement was discovered not because of some kind of financial anomaly, but because of a behavioral one. 67% of the embezzlement that the respondents had found, they found because of behavior. These were the staff members who didn't want to take vacation, the people who came in early and stayed late, the people who showed kind of high-risk behavior. These were the people who would sort of cut insurance corners, who would give a patient bleaching and bill it as a filling, that kind of stuff. And less than 1/3 of embezzlement was uncovered because the day sheet didn't balance to the bank deposit, or because the practice's accountant found it, or something like that. So if you're going to take away one thing tonight that you can use, it's that behavior is the key. And I mentioned before that we have an embezzlement risk assessment questionnaire. This is an online questionnaire that you do. It's 37 questions. It would take most dentists between 10 and 15 minutes. And they get back a score, and the score tells them kind of the probability that they're being embezzled. And it's sort of low, medium, high, and extreme.
And that's on the Prosperident website?
Well, actually, what I was going to do was make an offer to your audience. We normally charge for the questionnaire, but because I've had so much fun tonight, what I was going to do was say that for a time period, your audience could have it for nothing.
Nice.
Very nice. Thank you.
So I'll send you a web link after, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Yeah.
And an access code. Or do you want me to say it on the air?
You can say it on the air. Go ahead and say it on the air. We'll have it on the show notes as well, so people can check it out if they're driving or whatever.
Okay, perfect. Well, our website, first of all, which I don't think your audience will have trouble remembering, is dentalembezzlement.com.
Okay.
The place to find this questionnaire is dentalembezzlement.com/ERAQ. which stands for Embezzlement Risk Assessment Questionnaire.
Got it.
And that will take them to our online store, and there they'll be asked to pay for the questionnaire. But if they use the phrase dental hacks, all lowercase,
Okay.
until, let's say, July 31st, they can have it for nothing.
Excellent.
Nice.
Don't say we never gave you anything. That's awesome, David. That's so cool. I can't wait to take it.
Yeah, thank you.
That's really cool. We appreciate it like crazy. That's awesome.
I kind of want to take it. I kind of don't want to take it.
I know. I'm sort of yeah, a little nervous, but yeah, that's really interesting. Holy cow! So, all right, I want to ask you one other thing, because I want to know, what does it look like when you come into someone's office? Like, okay, let's say someone takes the questionnaire and they're like, man, my risk is way higher than I thought, and now that I'm thinking of it, there's been some weird behavior. David, help me. What do you do? What's the process?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing that people should know about our process is that it's stealthy, and it needs to be. When you mentioned come into the office, we don't do that.
Okay.
We work typically through the cloud. There's the very, very rare case where we actually need to physically visit an office. But in the vast majority of what we do, it's done through the cloud, and that enables us to keep stealth. If you suspect that somebody's stealing, it's really important that you not tip your hand to them. And just a general observation about human nature, if somebody thinks that there's a possibility they're going to jail, the normal rules that govern civilized behavior probably don't apply to them.
I'll bet things can get crazy if they think they're onto them.
Let me define crazy. In 2012, a woman in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, so just outside Baltimore, pled guilty to murdering the dentist from whom she'd been embezzling. So her name is Shante Joyner Hickman. She was working for a dentist named Albert Rowe. She was stealing from him, and she thought she was going to get caught. So what she did is she came back to the office one night when she knew Dr. Rowe would be there. She brought her cousin with her for muscle, and she and her cousin dragged Dr. Rowe into the bathroom and beat him to death. The amount involved was $17,000.
Wow.
She received a sentence of 12 years in prison. Her cousin, whose name is Dante Jeter, was sentenced to 20 years in jail. So I'm not fooling around here. If you or an audience member suspects that they're being embezzled, it's really important that the investigation be done covertly.
You bet, yeah.
So that's what we do. We make what's called a forensic clone of your practice management software. We also gather some other things that you have in the office, and we work through a series of tests where we're looking for the most likely patterns of embezzlement. It usually takes about 6 weeks, and again is done in a way that your employees will not know that you're doing it.
Interesting. So when you're looking for that, do you usually start with the most obvious and work your way backward, or is it sometimes maybe the dentist has an idea of how it's happening? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, we do a fairly detailed, structured interview with the dentist.
Okay.
And we decide based on that interview what the areas of highest risk are, and we target those first.
That's something that I hope no one has to do, but Kyle, in a way, I'm glad that you have I'm glad that you're able to anyhow. God.
Well, as I tell people sometimes, I don't cause embezzlement. I just keep score.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. All right. So we're going to make sure we've got all the links up and everything like that. If you guys have questions for David, you can hit us at info@dentalhacks.com. We'll make sure that he gets your questions. And you know what? If we may have you on again after we have some questions. This was fascinating. I have to say, like I said, a lot of the answers you gave were not the ones I was expecting at all. And I suspect our listeners are probably feeling the same way. But, man, David, thank you very much for being on the show tonight. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, look, this was fun, and I'd love to do it again.
Excellent. Well, David Harris of Prosperident. If anything he said rang your bell, man, contact us, and we'll get questions to him, or contact him because you might need his services. And you guys are located. Your headquarters is where you are in Halifax. Is that right?
Headquarters, which has a grand total of 5 people, is in Halifax,
Okay.
Canada.
Okay.
But our investigators live all over the continent.
Okay.
We've got people in Texas and Tennessee and Georgia and California and Ohio and so on.
So typically, if someone needs you, a lot of it can be done remotely anyhow, and you hook them up with someone that's relatively close to him. Is what it sounds like.
Actually, we almost completely ignore geography.
Oh, okay, interesting.
We match needs to investigator skills. So, for example, if an orthodontist calls us, they're going to be handled by one of our orthodontic investigators who could live anywhere. There's no particular advantage to proximity anymore.
I got it. Wow. Again, David Harris, thank you so much for being on tonight.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
sure
you.
this has got people thinking, and we'll talk to you again really soon.
Thank you guys very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Jason, man, I've got a problem.
What's the problem, man?
I don't have enough 5-star reviews on my Google page for my
Oh,
office.
man, that's totally important for a dental practice, man.
How else am I supposed to get new patients coming in my door?
Well, tell you what, Alan.
What, Jason?
If you go to 5starreviewsystem.com and mention the dental hacks,
What will they do for you?
you can get $50 off the setup fee
Holy cow.
and start getting awesome 5-star reviews for your dental office.
Nothing but 5-star reviews. It's amazing stuff. It really is. We have lots of listeners that use the 5-star review system.
Yes.
And if you drop our name, tell them the Dental Hack sent you, or give them the code 5970 when you sign in, they'll knock $50 off your setup fee.
$50.
And you help support the podcast.
Yes.
So you need more 5-star Google reviews.
You do.
And 5-star review system is the way to get them.
Get them.
All right, and welcome back. If that doesn't give you pause, I don't know what will. I think everyone probably knows someone who's dealt with embezzlement. And from what it sounds like, what David's talking about, probably everyone's going to deal with it in some way or another, whether it's a staff member or, he's talking about it's becoming more common that, like, dentists steal from dentists and stuff, like partners and stuff, which just makes you sick to think about it. But it's all good information. It's probably best not to be in denial about it. So again, if you're interested in getting in touch with David Harris, you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@dentalhacks.com, and we'll make sure that we get any questions to David. And again, he's probably going to be on again. He said that he'd love to come on. There's more to talk about. With as much as we talked about, there's actually more to talk about. So let's move on to the Brain Trust segment. This was one of my favorite Brain Trust segments we've done. Again, we have Dr. Lance Timmerman, Dr. Melissa Zettler, and Dr. Richard Lowe. They were all on, and they all kind of come from a little bit of a different angle. We talked a lot about charting, dental documentation, and maybe a little bit of the future of dental documentation. Where are we heading? What about having like cameras, either cameras recording, actual clinical data, or at very least recording like the interactions that you have with your patients, so you can kind of fall back on that. We were talking about the difference between video and audio and that sort of thing, but it's pretty interesting. I had a friend who went before the board a few weeks ago and really got hammered on documentation. And to be honest, I was just kind of pissed off about it, and I wanted to talk about it. And lo and behold, dentists have a lot to say on this topic, and I suspect you probably know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of documentation it seems like we do for the wrong reasons. Maybe it's more about covering our ass than making sure that patient outcomes are the best. But so we talk about that for a little while, and pretty good stuff. Again, if you have any questions or comments about charting, info@dentalhacks.com, and we'll catch you on the other side of this brain trust.
In a world where dentists are often boring and usually humorless, there exists an elite few that rise above the cacophony of mediocrity. Occasionally, these world-class clinicians come together in a meeting of the minds unparalleled anywhere on Earth. We call these gatherings the Dental Hacks Brain Trust.
You can then alter, customize as needed. Is that right?
Yeah. So let's say it's our comp exam. During that visit, we're getting, all of our initial diagnoses down, perio charting, all that stuff. And now they're coming back for their MOD on 5, say.
Uh-huh.
So then my assistant would go in under restorative. She'd click the composite template. It would come up and it would say chief complaint. She'd write in their chief complaint. It would say review of medical history.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there because the chief complaint is always very important. But when someone scheduled for a filling, they often they don't have a chief complaint. Their
sometimes they do.
Their chief complaint is, I really don't want to be here. I wish I didn't have to have this filling. That's their chief complaint.
The chief complaint is you.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I get it. You need to chart that stuff. But on the other hand, sometimes they don't have a chief complaint.
Sure. So you just write none.
Yeah,
none.
Except I think they always. I'm in dental school. None was never an acceptable answer for that. I remember that they wanted you to. I'm like, not that I don't even know what the answer to that is, but because again, chief complaint's always important. Diagnosis is always important. Of course, you're doing, like you said, your diagnosis is typically done in a different room at a different time, but they want you to make sure that you've noted the diagnosis.
Confirming it and carrying it over into that template. Yeah. And then that you've checked the medical history. And then we have a line in there that says patient consents to treatment or mother consents to treatment, father. So somebody's consented to treatment. And then, how much anesthetic did you give? What type of adhesive? What composite? Was there any complications? Goodbye.
Yeah. So you can crank it out with that, and it doesn't necessarily come out in a SOAP note, but it's all there. It just isn't.
It actually is written out in SOAP note format.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool because here's my thing. In the next few weeks, I'm going to try and generate my own templates so that basically in Dentrix has a very their templates, their ability to do templates in Dentrix are amazing. Like you can essentially come up with anything. And my hope is that I'm going to walk through procedures and exams, and have Dentrix ask all the right questions so that either myself or the assistant can be filling it in as we go along. Because my problem is, if I leave it to do, if I go into another room and I don't get it done, it's going to not get done, or it's going to be. And if you're filling out that information 2-3 days after the fact, you don't remember all that stuff. Why would you? I mean, it's typically stuff that happens at the. So I think the system has to be such that it can be done at the time, because if it hangs over, it's more of a mess.
And I'll tell you with Dentrix, one nice thing is your assistant can enter in like our diagnosis tab. Like we have 8, it has defective margin. You can enter anything you want, but where it's a pain in the butt is when you go in to fill in your template. Let's say you've done the 3 composites in a row.
Yep.
And one of them has caries on the mesial, one of them has it on the mesial and distal, and one of them has a defective margin. You then have to go, you have to click just one thing. So you click caries MOD. And then you have to physically go into the diagnosis and separate it out. Okay, well, the MOD was just on 4.
Yeah.
Defective margin was on 3. And number 5 had caries on the mesial. It won't let you assign each individual tooth its own issue.
It is. Sometimes it's better to do them one at a time when I know what you're talking about. And it's not super flexible on that end of it. I'll say that.
No.
It's interesting. Lance, tell me about what software you're using and how are you getting chart notes in there?
Well, software, I'm using Dentrix.
Okay.
Probably not correctly. But
is anyone? I mean, talk about a software that's got so much stuff in it. No one could use the whole thing for sure.
Yeah, I think I need to take some sort of class. Every time I get these little
don't
flyers.
Bother, they'll change it.
Yeah, that's right. and the trainer will go, God, that was in the last iteration. I don't even know.
Well, the last time we had a trainer was in 1999.
Yeah,
and so
that's about me too.
I'm pretty sure
that was before they started calling it G anything. I think.
Oh my God, I held on to 11.5 until it was like G4 and had a huge shift and things to catch up with. So. Chart notes, I was thinking about a friend of mine in a very affluent part of the States who gets sued a lot because he has one of those guys with no filter. And, instead of saying, you look nice today, he might make a comment on your boobs. And so.
Oh, my gosh.
So if anybody knows legal things, well, it's him. And he said that the most important time to chart well is the consultation and the initial appointment. and
whenever you're talking about boobs.
And boobs, and those are best done with photos. So what he did is he says that
straight from the mouth of Dr. Lance Timmerman.
Bimanual manipulation in the initial intake is different.
Let me know how that works out for you.
So he videotapes his consultations, and he tells the patient, "Hey, I hope it's okay. I'm terrible with my chart notes, and I'm forgetful. So I'm doing this just so I can, make my chart notes later." But he actually just adds that to the file so that he has record of the conversation, the consultation, and has them. So it's well documented what was going on, including in that consultations, the financial arrangements as well. So at least you can say, prove that we did discuss that this was a $10,000 thing, and no, it wasn't insurance only. So that was where he found that was the most critical to have being well documented. That the individual chart notes day to day is where I would get thrown in jail, because it's supposed to be the staff does it and I kind of overlook it and approve or disapprove. That you're moving so fast that at the end of the day you're like, yeah, it's all good, with barely a glance at really what was written, and that's why I'm going to go into jail.
Well, sure.
You want top bunk or bottom bunk? You want top bunk or bottom bunk? Because I think we'd probably be sellies. I'm pretty sure.
I think that videotaping that consultation sounds like an awesome idea.
Okay, that's kind of where I was going to go with it. Yeah.
I like that idea because I get so many people who, and I think in a way it does two things. Number one, it does document really, really well, but it also disincentivizes the patient of arguing and ever going to the board, because you can say, look, we videotaped that, or they see it and go, yeah, I'm never going to argue about what we talked about because I know they've got it documented.
Tell me how he does it though. Does he I'm trying to picture, where is the video camera at this point? Is it like in the corner of the room, just looking down at them, and it can hear everything?
Yeah.
And do you drop the lights first? Put on some music.
It's very, very soft.
For your bimanual manipulation.
It's tastefully done. It's very tasteful.
Yes, that's right. It's sort of artsy kind of,
Right.
Well, I'm just picturing that because I like the idea. I think the other thing, the patient has to know they're being recorded and all that stuff, and I'm sure that you can get past that. But here's the thing. So it isn't really about it's not that you're videotaping clinical images. You're videotaping the conversation they had is essentially it. Would that be right?
Essentially it's informed consent.
Okay. Could that be effective in audio only?
I think audio, you would have to make sure the person stated their name and
good point. Good point. The video is the visual, so they can't say it was some other person that you. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't think about that.
But
do you only do cases over a certain dollar amount, or would you have to do that for every single consent you get? Like, you only need 3 fillings. Do you videotape that?
I think it comes down to which ones are you most likely to get sued for?
If we knew the answer to that question, we'd be golden.
You know what, though? Think about it, though. The 3 fillings, who's being sued over 3 fillings equals worst case scenario. If you like had a seizure and chopped the person's teeth up, you could probably write a check more than likely if it's a few fillings versus that giant case. So, I mean, in my mind, if you're going to be selective about what you do this with, you still do it with the cases where you're like, wow, there's a lot to be done here. I mean,
well, it's not even that you're going to be sued as much as the patients, let's say they had 3 fillings and they owe, let's say, $400, and they're like, I'm not paying it. And you're like, well, we told you that your fee estimate was 50%. And now you could say, well, look,
that's
right
true.
here.
So in that case, just make it, you wouldn't need a high resolution anything for that. You could have a relatively, just a pretty basic video camera with a decent mic to do that.
But you have to remember, the 3 fillings at most would be small claims. I'm
not saying they're suing you, but I mean, most of our lives aren't about being sued. Most of our lives are about day-to-day crap that sucks away your energy and time.
Yeah, I just don't think I would be videotaping 3 fillings.
And I don't know how you would. So the patient experience. I have this friend who the same friend who says, now we have informed consents for everything that we do. And so we just have them sign informed consents for everything. And I'm like, at what point does having the patient sign an informed consent every appointment and stuff make the patient feel like, man, this guy's just all about, maybe I'm completely in the wrong on that. And I mean, Melissa
I think they're used to it now.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like
we started doing it, and I thought this was ridiculous. The same thoughts, and we got pages for just about every ridiculous little thing. It's now a matter of routine, and no one's even batted an eye.
Yeah.
So even for filling, they sign an informed consent.
I think so. I think I saw one. It was an idea my staff had, and I just kind of whatever. I don't care. But yeah, just make sure they got the top vocal before I walk in.
And then the other thing is like, do you have an informed consent that's a generalized informed consent? Prior to like a generalized one after the main treatment plan versus. Honestly, of course, I always have an informed consent before surgery. Like, and that's the one that goes over potential surgical complications.
Right.
Always that one that says, "Oh, and by the way, you could die." There's that.
We lead with that.
Yeah. Because after that, I mean, it's sort of it's all downhill from there. I mean,
well, you're alive, aren't you?
Yeah, you could just stop breathing for a little while and
Dr.
bring
Nick
you back.
Rivera's billboard, if we don't kill you, you don't pay.
That's right. So, I mean, I guess here's the other thing. Now, I've been thinking about this documentation like crazy. How much do they allow photography, video, audio, if you were doing that, whatever, as documentation? In other words, they always say, if it's not on the chart, it didn't happen. And of course, well,
why couldn't it be in the chart? Why couldn't you take that file and drop it into their chart? Why wouldn't that be a legal document?
That's an interesting question, because my friend who's been going through all this has said they disregarded his photography because they want it written in text form. I'm like, well, wait a second. What does that even mean?
There's no way that photography couldn't be part of your legal chart.
Exactly.
No
why are we taking so many pictures then? Like, and
for insurance.
Yeah, for insurance, or actually for me to be able to look back on it in a week after I've taken it, going, oh, this is what this thing looks like. But my thing is like, okay, if you do that, then okay. So I've got a camera that takes HD video on the microscope. I can essentially videotape every procedure that I can use with the scope, and I actually do videotape as many of my exams as I can, like recall exams and stuff. And I found myself, it's cool to look back on them. I don't use them for anything. Like, I'm typically not going back and checking them that often, but I've been doing it for better part of 6 months now, just as almost an experiment in documentation here. And what I don't do, and that I should do, is I turn the mic off, right? Like, I should, because a lot of times there's dumb stuff or it's TV or whatever, but I probably should have the mic on. So if I'm explaining something, the patient can understand that. But I just don't find that my patients have that many questions like that. I don't know.
No, right. Well, you just never know. And well, here's the thing. I believe this to be true, that the board can decide what they will and won't accept. But if you are actually going to go to court, your evidence is different than maybe what the board says you have to have in your chart. So let's say you really actually do go to court, which I don't think happens very often. Now you have all these pictures to prove your point, or this video. It could, if you're doing big cases, the more stuff like that you have that can be brought in as evidence, I would think would be helpful. But really, there's a difference between going to the board and going to court and being sued.
Yeah. It's just frustrating to me too, because it's just like, how much is enough? And it'd be better to do your documentation, not thinking about that, But the reality is, all of our documentation ever since we were in dental school was geared towards, well, if you don't write this down, then they'll say it didn't happen, and that comes down to either the board looking over your shoulder or being sued, and you're just sort of like, how about we look at patient outcomes? Classic thing. Yeah. All of the stuff that happened to my friend, none of it had a darn thing to do with patient outcomes at all.
Right. Like because they're mad about money.
They're jumping all over his sedation protocols, right? But interestingly, his sedation protocols can't be too bad. Patients around walking and living and chewing and everything like that. So how bad was the sedation that he did, being that the patient survived and thrived? You know what I'm saying?
Well, and you said there was a nurse anesthetist.
Yeah, there's that too. Oh, yeah.
Why wouldn't they be the ones in being brought up and saying...
Because they don't have a dental license. That's why. Bastards. So, I mean, it's a nurse anesthetist, and it's in there.
I suppose, the person is still the overall seer and responsible ultimately for what happens.
Yes, but that a nurse anesthetist is a licensed professional on their own. So the reality is that procedure has their name on it too. It isn't just the dentist. I mean, if I hire an anesthesiologist, I can't be held responsible for an anesthesiology complication that I don't even know about, right? I mean, it happened in my office, but it's one thing if I'm doing the anesthesia. It's another thing if an anesthesiologist with their own
license and, frankly, insurance has the problem. You know what I'm saying?
So the nurse anesthetist would have a standard of care that they have to meet, and the dentist would have a standard of care to meet. And you'd like to think that the standard of cares would be similar.
Sure, yeah. But my thing is they're claiming that the anesthesia he did was different than he. Long story short, but even you'd think that with the nurse anesthetist there, that they really wouldn't have that much to say. But
exactly, that's my
point.
You know?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. The whole thing is, and again, part of it is you get brought in front of the board, and for PR alone, you've got a patient complaining to the board. The board wants the patient to understand that we are a self-regulating group, of dentists, which is hilarious because the board is, let's face it, the board is run by lawyers, not really there's a few dentists on it, but the board is run by lawyers. But
actually, I think it's made of mostly of lay people in Minnesota.
It's lay people, but you think the lay people are the ones that are running the meetings? Guaranteed not. It's a lawyer based. I have a friend who's on the Michigan board, and he was telling me, he said we can't do anything. It's we're there for the lay people and dentists are there for show. It's being run by the lawyers, and I believe that. Like we're out of our element in that sort of thing. We fix teeth. It's not like I didn't go to dental school so I could sit on a board. It's like in any case, that's probably more opinion than fact there. But the reality is that there's a lot of legal wranglings going on there, and they want the appearance that the board is regulating the dental profession. So
and don't forget that the board's whole mission is to protect the public against us.
Sure.
And which sucks because I think the person you're referring to and most people, we just really want to serve people well.
Sure.
And when that feels like you're being accused of not doing that, it feels personal because it's like, well, dang, that's not right.
It must have felt personal to Lance because he decided to not take it.
I was pissed.
I mean, like, especially if you have documentation that my thing is this. Let's say, are all of the dentists and lay people on the board trained at the level of someone who's, trained to do sedation, trained to do, I can
tell you the two people I know who work with the board in Minnesota are both sedation dentists.
Okay. They should know better. It's one of those things where they should understand that this is not like my understanding is there was an oral surgeon that was consulted on this case and weighed in saying this was general anesthesia when it wasn't. We know it wasn't. In any case, this is stuff that we probably talked about off air.
It's probably state specific because I did have the more I think about it, I've got way too much experience with the board.
No, I'm glad you're on for that reason. Tell us more.
It's like, holy shit, now that there's this time and this time, and like, I think most people go through their career and have zero. So,
no, I don't agree with that. I don't.
Okay,
everybody's going to go to the board at some point.
Oh, good. Thank God. Because I had this one where I was doing 6 month smiles and she wanted them off in like 4 months. And I said, look, we're not even to the 6 months. She felt like she had enough. She got what she wanted. She wanted them off. I had her sign a whole bunch of stuff, including, look, if you change your mind, it's going to cost full fee to put it back on. And she eventually changed. Long story short, she changed her mind, but it was bent that I was going to charge her, $4,000 to put them back on. I'm like, well, we didn't finish, and it's the same amount of work. But she was informed. So she complained to the board, and the board responded saying, this sounds like a money dispute and not standard of care. Anything has anything to do with money, we back away. It has nothing to do with us. And so her thing got dropped completely. It's almost like at least in Washington, the state board is standard of care and civil litigation is about the money.
Sure.
And they can overlap, but at least in Washington.
So they were reasonable. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I wonder about that too is like, okay, let's say the board weighs in on something. It's pretty rare that someone goes before the board and doesn't at least get slapped on the wrist, because I think the board wants the public to know that we're doing something
got your
for
back.
you. Exactly, which is baloney in the case. And the other thing is that there's no small fine from the board. They're not going to fine you $50. So then my question is, can that be used in civil litigation, or is that a closed thing that can't be? Like, if the board weighed in against you, is that evidence against you in a civil case? These are things I don't know. But
the common thing is they would start with a board complaint to arm them for the civil litigation. But if you win with the board, it doesn't mean you won't get sued, but it certainly is a blow against their case to try to go against you because you didn't violate standard of care.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they can. I mean,
yeah, because I had one where the person still didn't accept the fact that I was fine and within standard of care, but then they couldn't find an attorney to take the case because I'd gotten requests from attorneys and sent everything. But hey, lucky for me, I already have all the data collected because of the board complaint. So it was really easy to just forward the information.
Yeah.
And then months go by and a different attorney requested information.
Yeah.
And it finally just went away because no attorney would take it I think because there was a board judgment that in my favor.
Yeah.
You're lucky because it seems like you can always find some lawyer who will help somebody sue something for something if they want to.
It finally landed on a guy who never went to the actual courtroom. It was always gearing for settlements. And so I was loaded for bear and digging my heels in and ready to go.
I'm kind of glad there's cantankerous people like you because I'm the guy who's going to write the check. So long as I have enough to write the check, I'm going to write the check to make it so I don't have to confront that. Honestly, I'm such a wuss about stuff like that.
I'm the cantankerous.
Well, I'm glad there's someone like you out there, and I won't lie to you. It makes me feel really good that they ended up dropping it because it doesn't seem like that happens very much. It seems like they jump on. If you get landed on, you just sort of have to take your licks. It sounds like.
But Al, aren't you worried if you just like let's say something gets brought to the board for you, and you really feel like you've been treated unjustly, which I think a lot of times we, like the person we're talking about feels that he's been treated unjustly. And if you just pay the fine and say, okay, I mean, why wouldn't you stand up and say, no, that's not right. Here's what happened. This is, and, fight it a little bit within.
Partly it's because, like, I think in his situation, he's probably going to do that because he's frustrated that he feels like what came down from the board is labeling him as a bad dentist, when in reality it was a charting error or charting omission or something like that could happen to anyone. His point is like you're nailing me and charging me a bunch of money and my name gets put in this database for stuff that if you check anyone's charts across the country, you're going to find similar stuff. This is not this isn't malicious. This is okay. So my chart wasn't perfect. And my suspicion is, again, because it was a huge case, they're much more likely to jump on that, which is also super not fair. I mean, that's like, okay, so you're a big case dentist. Does that mean you have to be better than everyone else when it comes to charting? Do you have to? I mean, it doesn't. I guess you probably do. I mean, in reality, you probably do because you're more likely to get landed on. But it's not very fair. But the other thing is like nothing bad happened on the patient outcome. The only thing bad they have is they didn't like his chart. Well, if that patient never complained, there never would have been anything there. So it's just like
right. Well, what I meant was you said you would probably just say, okay, here's the money. Because
you know what? I know what he's going through right now. He doesn't sleep. He's stressed out.
You might feel differently though if in the heat of the moment when you finally get kicked in the nuts and you're like, wait.
And I will say this, if I had the documentation to go through with it, like if someone was, if it was not justified and I had the documentation, I would feel different. I mean, I'm sure I would, but the reality is I mean, in his case, his documentation isn't perfect. It isn't perfect. It's pretty good, actually, but it's not perfect. And
nobody's is perfect.
Yeah, but my thing is like, okay, so if they've got you on that, his lawyer said, I'm not going to represent you if you try and do this because the documentation part is indefensible. You didn't have the stuff that they said you didn't have. Now, on the other hand, it comes down to them saying, well, if it's not on the chart, it didn't happen. But I'm like, okay, so does that mean if I wrote that, 4 unicorns ran into the operatory that it really happened? Come on. I mean, it gets to a point where it's a little bit silly. I'm documenting just so I can cover my ass in front of the board. That's not right either. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. I'm like,
well, can I jump back in here for a second?
Please.
The one thing that I'm realizing is that while I was complaining about my paper charts and my Army systems and all that stuff a little bit, it's so nice to not have to worry about the board and lawyers and litigation and all that. I mean, you can get in trouble in the Army if you're doing things wrong and not charting.
That's right. Push-ups.
Right. A couple more laps, a couple more push-ups. But it's so nice as a new dentist. Hopefully I don't develop bad habits that then when I get out, I'm like, oh yeah, I just chart this way because that's how I did it in the Army. And that ends up biting me. But for now, I can just worry about the dentistry. There's no money involved. So it's just kind of funny. Well, it's just funny that I realized that this whole like half of the conversation, I'm like, oh wow, I don't have to worry about that right now. And I will later, but for now, it's kind of nice.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I could see that too. And what's interesting is you kind of get to, well, I'm not going to say you get to make mistakes because it sounds like when you made the mistake, you numbed up the wrong tooth. I mean, that's happened before to me, and usually I'm able to laugh it off and explain to the patient and tell them that I'm sorry, but it's, you'll be out of that in a second, and it's embarrassing and it makes you look like an idiot. But most of the patients understand that you're a human being. But the bottom line is you're able to kind of learn what works and what doesn't work without the worry of this kind of thing. I mean, a litigious patient could be pissed about getting numbed on the wrong side of the mouth and could file against you in the board. You know what I'm saying? I don't
right. Well, and even then, when I got written up and the root cause analysis and all of that, sure, it was kind of embarrassing, and I felt bad that I was causing 10 hours of man labor to be done just to figure out why I numbed up the wrong side of someone's mouth. But
it's so silly.
Right. And it was silly, and I just took it as a learning experience. But there was no true negative consequence. Like, if I did this over and over, sure, then maybe I'd get in trouble. But it's not like my permanent record is besmirched now, and I'm worried about my Yelp reviews. So
yeah,
it's very nice. That's one of the things that's nice about being a new dentist in the Army.
It's really good. But I mean, to wrap up, I guess you've got. I just want to ask you a couple questions to wrap up for people that are listening to this. If someone wants a very simple, short answer, what's the best way to chart? What's the best way to chart? Like, what are you guys doing that you like, and what are you doing that maybe you're going to do differently? I'm going to start with Melissa. Like, you're starting to use these templates, and it sounds like you're liking those. So you would recommend that?
Yeah, having my assistants open up a template, fill it out, and have me go in and edit it and check it has really been helpful to me.
You feel like your chart notes are better and more complete now than they used to be?
I feel like they're more consistent, that they're done more quickly, and yeah.
That's
cool.
It's
been helpful.
Lance, tell me about what are you doing that's working, and what are you doing that you might change if you were going to make a change?
For the mundane things, just came in for a crown prep. It's probably just going to stay the same with the staff pretty much using the templates and filling it all in and supposedly checking to make sure I agree with it. For the bigger things, I recently bought the Dragon software.
Okay.
Because to be able to voice it out and then check for errors and edit it down, cut and paste, and put in the chart notes. Kind of for the bigger things when you've got these long surgeries and big cases where you really want all the details, because that's the nuts and bolts of you don't want to chart for litigation, but the bigger things, that's better to have all the details to be able to collect it.
Are you using the Dragon stuff yet?
I just got it, so I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
And apparently someone told me that there's Dragon Medical, so I should have bought the bigger one because it has a better vocabulary.
Although my understanding
it's like
is
$1,000.
Yeah, it'll learn though over time. It'll learn.
That's what I heard
and everything.
And if
that's a really cool idea, Lance.
Thanks. I occasionally come up with some good nuggets.
I've thought about it, but I'm like, I type really fast is the thing. I'm sort of like, really? But I mean, it might be kind of cool to do that. The only thing is, though, is it might be tough to do the template and that. You almost have to kind of do one or the other at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for the bigger
but for large
cases,
surgery, templates don't work.
Yeah.
You can't use
it's
them
just
anyway.
the day-to-day. It's just the day-to-day stuff that templates work.
Templates are super easy. The bigger stuff you need to have a different plan for, maybe.
Yeah, you got to hand write all that out.
Yeah.
So we are looking at the very thing about all the technology and the benefits and everything is just the archiving. Figuring a system to be able to take these videos of the consultation and where are you going to put it. But I do want to have, I'm to the point now when we have consultations, I'm having them write in their own handwriting the chief complaint, and I've got a checklist of all the things that we talked about in the discussion.
The patient writes it in their own handwriting?
Yeah, so they can say, I never complained about bullshit. You said that tooth hurt. So that's why we talked about you.
Do you give him a crayon? Do you give him a crayon? That'd be sweet.
I should. So because we
put an X where it hurts you.
Yeah, exactly.
Show me on the skull where. So I got the idea because we used to use the ReCare postcards, and so that it was in their own handwriting when they wrote their name and an address. So when we would mail it out, it was their own handwriting, not us pestering them. I thought, well, hey, if I'm going to have a chief complaint. Because, the legal document is if you put quotes around their chief complaint, then that's a direct quote that they said. And if you don't have the quotes, then that's just me interpreting what they said. That's stupid. So
But I don't think interpreting what they said is so far off. The reality is, I understand what you're saying, the quote thing, but it's
Why is that so much more powerful? But so anyway, I have them write out the chief complaint, or why they're in the consultation room with me. Was this a cosmetic consultation, or was this just a dental home? If it's a dental home, why the hell am I having a consultation? Is my bigger point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, the other thing is like, if you haven't been doing it this way, if you haven't been using the really good templates, you haven't been doing your complete. How do you ease into it with the patients you've had for 20 years? That's another question. Yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, your patients don't know if you're using a template to soap note out.
I understand, but I guess my thing is, if you're doing your exams differently now, I've always had that thing. If you're starting to get more comprehensive exams, it's a whole other podcast probably. But how do you use that into the story? But it has something to do with the documentation.
We invite them back for a different type of an exam, so it's not a recare.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then I just have this checklist of things that we talk about, because if one person years ago was bent that we never talked about implants when we did a bridge, that they would have may have chosen the implant, and you're sitting there thinking, no, we talked about, but briefly. Because you have no money and you had to struggle to pay for the bridge. Why would I bring up the implant?
Yeah.
Or, really go over it in detail.
I have to tell you, the video for a consult seems cool, but it seems like if you can get past the fact that it's the patient's own voice and they have said that this is them on the recording, an audio seems like it would be perfectly good. I mean, it seems like it would be, it would definitely be a smaller file. It'd be easier you could have it transcribed and all that stuff. You could do the same with the video too, I guess. But the video seems so personal. But then again, if the patient... Would you feel weird being videotaped as a patient? I don't know if I would or not. I probably would, at least to start with.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I haven't implemented that yet, but my friend that down in Beverly Hills says it's great.
Totally.
It makes sense, because the patient then can't really come back. It makes sense for the most reason that the patient can't say that they didn't say that. I have to say though, I never have interaction with patients that.
I'll jump in there, but I was going to say, if I was doing big cases, I would definitely do that. If I was consistently doing full mouth rehabs or all on four type cases that were just higher likelihood of litigation or complaints or problems, in a heartbeat, I'd set that up.
It makes sense. I will say this, okay, listeners, if you're listening to this and you are foaming at the mouth because we've missed something super obvious that's an easy way to do better charting, you drop us a line at info@dentalhacks.com, and we'll email. And if you've got great ideas and want to come on the show, we'll bring you on. Because my goal is over the next few months to actually come up with really usable templates in Dentrix, and I'm willing to share the process that I'm going through. I've kind of laid it out. I'm going to actually sort of take each procedure and do its own little decision tree kind of thing, and figure out the questions that the software can ask me to make sure I get the most thorough note that I can get for everything. It's going to be a process, because it's going to take a long time, I think. But if you have any suggestions for me, or this is how I do it, it really works, or you think I'm crazy because there's something better, I'd love to hear from you. It's info@dentalhacks.com. And I'll tell you what, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up. This was, considering we didn't know how many topics we're going to cover this morning, this was really good, actually. This was great. So we may have lost Melissa, so if we did, I'm sorry.
It's all about lowering the bar.
That's right. Melissa, are you still here? Oh, you are? Okay, good. All right, well, thank you for spending some time with me, you guys, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
All right, thanks.
Take care.
Welcome back. Hope you thought that was a good brain trust. I thought it was really good. But if you have any questions or comments about it, why don't you hit us at info@dentalhacks.com, or you can call us on the 800 number. Actually, it's an 866 number. It is 866-223-5257. That's and if you leave a message, we may very well play it on the air if you'd like us to. Again, 866-223-5257. The awesome thing about that is if you're driving, you don't have to stop and type anything if you have a great thing to tell us. So feel free to do that. So now's the time in the show where my voice gets funny and I say, go hack yourself. Now, typically, Jason goes first, but since he's not here, I'm going to go ahead and do 2 go hack yourselves because I have to. I was going to do 2 if I had Jason on, and since I don't, I'm going to do 2 anyhow. So the first thing, my first go hack yourself is actually a website that is done by a friend of ours, a friend of the show. His name is Dr. Russell Kirk. He has a dental podcast that's going to be the first half of it. But his dental podcast is called The Business of Dentistry. It's a good podcast, and it's just him. He doesn't have guests on, and so it's generally kind of a short form. It's probably 20 to 30 minutes typically, and he talks about a particular topic. I really enjoy it. He's very good. And although he's an oral surgeon, a lot of the stuff is very applicable to general dentists and non-specialists too. But he really does. He talks about the business of dentistry and using things that can help with your business. He's talking more about being a practice owner than a dental business owner necessarily, but it's really good stuff. And you can actually find that podcast on iTunes called The Business of Dentistry, or his website is businessofdentistrypodcast.com. Good stuff. Very good stuff. And secondly, he has a very cool website that he clued me into to check it out. And I kind of wish you'd check it out too. It's called Simply CE. And it's sort of, you know what it is? It's like a searchable database of continuing education. And it's still growing. He doesn't have everything, but he's got a lot of really good, basically, you can go look for courses, it's pretty cool. You can set it up to find courses on certain topics. You can find certain courses in different, regions. Like if you have a course that shows up and, 30 miles away from you, you can actually have the website email you for details. It's really cool. And he continues to grab more continuing education, data and bring it in. It's growing. It's not complete yet, but I have to say it's pretty good. You should definitely go check it out. The website is simplyce.com. Simply CE, no dashes or dots or anything like that, .com. And I think you'll like it a lot. I think you'll find that it's pretty useful. And I guess the coolest thing is, like I said, you can have it email you when like a certain speaker is giving something or a certain topic comes up. It's very cool. So those are my two go hack yourself items for today. We're kind of fans of Russell Kirk, and actually he's going to be on the Brain Trust in an upcoming episode too. We did a Brain Trust coming up on complications in dentistry. We thought, what better person to have on than an oral surgeon? So we had him on. It was a good time. We had a great one. So you can look forward to that. So basically, we're wrapping it up here, but I'm just going to remind you, if you like the show, we'd love it if you'd go over to iTunes or Stitcher, but iTunes is where we primarily want. If you go to iTunes, leave us a review. You can leave us a rating. 5 stars is awesome, but leave us a review too, because that lets the world know what we're doing, lets us know what we're doing right. You guys have put some really kind reviews on that. I read all of them. I get really charged up, and it's just great to hear from people that they like what we're doing. But also, if you have a chance, you could go check out Patreon. And like I said, it's a little cheesy, a little bit like an NPR begathon. But if you like the show and you feel like we're worth supporting, or you wanted to support us, you can go to Patreon. It's patreon.com, or you can go to our website at dentalhacks.com and click on the support us on Patreon, and it'll go over. We have 4 supporters now, and you can throw a couple bucks our way. And actually, Patreon supporters get a bunch of special extra content. So it's kind of cool. Like we're going to do at least one episode more per month for the Patreon only people. We're going to do blog posts over there, and I think Jason's going to potentially do some Speedo selfies. He's claimed that that's going to happen, so we'll see. If you're into that kind of thing. So, all right, my friends, thank you for sticking around for another episode. And again, any questions or comments, hit us at info@dentalhacks.com. And we'll probably be back next week with both of us here. Interestingly, we are both going to the Practice on Fire seminar coming up. It's this week. I'm flying out on Thursday, so in a couple days. So if you are going to the Practice on Fire, man, well, come say hello. We're going to bring some recording gear if anyone wants to be on the show. I'm thinking we're going to do kind of the next episode might be sort of a Practice on Fire kind of themed show. Looking forward to that like crazy. So again, practiceonfire.com if you want some details.